I think right from that very first day, what they wouldn't feel is the new child.
Is it better for a child to be right or for a child to be heard? Do you ever question, or when did you last question whether you were right for the role?
Leading teams has actually made me incredibly well qualified for this role.
Welcome to The Heads. I'm James. This is where we have long-form conversations with the head teachers that are shaping education today. I'm joined by Tom Le Tissier. Tom is the head of Alleyn's Regents Park. He grew up on an island in Guernsey, a small, tight-knit community where community isn't a value statement, it's just how life works. And I think that matters, because when you sit down with Tom, and when you have a conversation and listen to how he talks about schools, about belonging, about knowing every child, you hear the island in him. He studied sport at Leeds Beckett. He trained as a teacher and walked into his first classroom in Hertford in 2010. And that's where the journey begins. Tom, welcome to The Heads.
Hi, James.
Hello, thanks for doing this. Tom, Guernsey to Hertford to Regents Park, that's quite a journey. How did the island shape you, or has London changed you? Maybe both.
It's a good question. One, to be honest, I hadn't really considered previously. It has definitely shaped me, maybe more so my experiences on the island. But as you said, there's no choice but to be part of a community on an island. And I think on reflection, that has shaped me as a leader, shaped me as the community of a school that I want to create. So coming from Guernsey, where you cannot help but bump into someone, where you cannot help but contribute and want to contribute to a community there, but also where you're going to hear people's opinions. Growing up in sport, as you said, I can distinctly remember somebody telling me their exact opinions and what they thought of me as a footballer, and that's your reputation and how that's shaped, and that's important in people's perception. But more importantly than that, it develops character. And I think having trust in your character, in who you are, is the most important thing out of all that. And that's certainly what we see for our children here. Has London changed me? I don't think so. I'd like to think that it hasn't. What it has done actually is it's opened me up to a much more diverse community in the most amazing ways possible. So we see that within our school here. We see that as we celebrate each other's differences, and that certainly shaped my perspective, and ensuring that all families, all children have a sense of belonging within a community in that way that you have from an island growing up in Guernsey, but then something that you have to strategically create or recreate in a school to give that sense of community, that sense of belonging.
Let's look at sport, because that's a big part of your makeup. You studied sport, then education. Sport came first, education came later. How did that journey work?
I mean, they're definitely intertwined. So sport has been a huge part of my background. It has influenced decisions that I've made, the journey that I have been on. But they are intertwined, they're not separate. So I think a good teacher, for example, will be coaching children as much as they are teaching them. They will be designing specific scenarios for children to overcome challenges within to then excel. If you're spoon feeding answers in teaching, you're not really doing the job you should be doing. In the same way in sport, if coaches are standing behind a cricketer and directing them to the exact stroke they're going to play, they might have a one-off success, but then they can't recreate that in different scenarios.
I hear you. When you were growing up, did you have heroes, people that you wanted to be like?
There's some cliched answers, maybe. Growing up, I couldn't put other than the obvious sort of sports people, footballers, and having that,
Who were they?
Dream. So back in the day, that was the sort of Matt Le Tissier. That was very much as I was growing up, that was his era of scoring worldies in every other match. But actually sort of closer to home, it would have just been seeing my dad in the role that he took on, in work in managing a company outside of education, but working with children, and just seeing the sort of kind, caring, compassionate man that he was. And I think that's what drove me. That drove me into wanting to. That drove me into wanting to emulate the success that he had. But he passed away when I was 13, so I think that drove me even more to do something that I'm proud of and that I know that he'd be proud of.
You're a parent now. You've got 2 children.
Yeah.
Do you think you're a better teacher? Do you think you're a different teacher since you become a parent?
That's a good question. I think I'm a better leader now. I think I am it's much easier for me to see things from all sorts of different perspectives, whether it's the staff, whether it's the children, whether it's the parents, particularly that edge of parents. It has certainly made me more patient. And yeah, ultimately it has made me a better and stronger educator.
You've been a deputy, you've been a head teacher. What did each role teach you about what the next role was going to require? What have you learned as you progressed?
So I have worked in my career. I've worked under some amazing head teachers with very different but amazing attributes. So I think that's what's helped me prepare, from working under my first head teacher, who was incredibly kind and compassionate and listened, but that was never at the cost of making the right decision for a school, to seeing the strategic thinking, the looking at how we can take our school into the future. So working under these people, I had the opportunity to pick out what I knew would make me better as a leader. And
do you ever question, or when did you last question, whether you were right for the role?
All the time. Being complete, maybe too honest. But imposter syndrome is a huge thing. And I might be getting too honest here, but in the independent sector, there will be, if somebody were to write the profile of the founding head of Alleyn's Regent Park, I don't think that would be me. It would be someone who specialised early on in maybe an education, maybe went through Oxford, Cambridge, which I think, as much as I have this battle inside my head of imposter syndrome, actually the world we're going into needs more generalists. Actually, it requires our children to specialise as late on as possible. And that's something that has influenced me. The book Range by David Epstein has been transformative in my practice, and that's really dispelling the myth of early specialism, of the need for those generalist skills going across different boundaries, to the cross-disciplinary requirements of a head teacher. It means that actually my background of having come through sport, of always being part of a team and leading teams, has actually made me incredibly well qualified for this role and the best person for this role. But there's doubt every single day. And I think if there's not doubt, if we don't feel like we're failing at some point, we're probably not improving. So being reflective and building is, really an important part of what I do.
It sounds like we're getting into your philosophy. Generalism or specialism later, and proudly generalist and taking experience from elsewhere. Let's laser focus on your philosophy for a minute. What do you believe outside of education that other heads would disagree with? What are your
I mean, just that. I think there will be some heads. In fact, we know that there are some schools that are created to an incredibly specialist level that may just take up one subject and drive with that. We here are about ensuring that our children, in fact, our whole community, are all that they can be. You cannot find your thing if you haven't experienced. You can't excel at something you've never experienced before. So the idea of early specialization is something that I think is not good. For the world that we're going into, the world as it is changing, we need as many generalists, and then specialisation comes much, much later on.
And does that tie into a belief that we're overvaluing some things in education right now?
Yeah, so I think there is a risk of over-scaffolding. So within learning, scaffolding is important. We set the same high expectations for all of our children. We are ambitious for them. But if we over scaffold, then we are stealing that opportunity for them to overcome a challenge. We don't want to take that away from them. And where there will be some environments where there is, as I say, over scaffolding, where there is giving the children the answers as opposed to setting them up in an environment where they have to ask more questions. So I think for me, that's absolutely crucial that our teachers deliberately plan scenarios where there is risk within reason, and where there is challenge, and where there is struggle. And it's the children overcoming that, being resourceful, finding their agency, is where the huge amount of progress is going to happen. I think the other thing that some schools and school leaders, I think that we may disagree on, is AI and screen use, not necessarily screen time. So it's clearly a huge topic and something we might come on to more later. But AI is shaping the world now. It has been for longer than we probably realise, and it's the world that children will be going into. So I think it's our responsibility to educate children, not ban. We can't do a blanket ban on AI, because actually all we're doing is setting them up to go out into a world where it does exist, and they haven't been educated on the risks, but also the huge boundless possibilities. I mean, what I'm almost describing there is our AIQ curriculum and the environment that it sets children up to be able to discover, to work collaboratively. But although AIQ is the Alleyn's intelligence quotient, AI is a part of that. And I'm pleased that we are forward thinking, that we are looking at how children can be taught about AI within this safe environment, so they can then go and use it confidently, that we're creating critical thinkers who will be able to already, I will show them a video without prompting, and they will start to question, is that AI generated, is it not? And that's exactly what we need to be doing. We need to be creating these curious minds. The ban of screen time or screen use is dangerous, in my opinion.
I think that's a really good example of how teaching has to evolve to the big wide world outside of the school gates. Yeah. I think digital literacy, AI. Do you think there are other areas where teaching needs to evolve?
Absolutely. It is becoming easier and easier to have knowledge at the tap of a finger, or even just asking that knowledge. Foundational knowledge will be important. The foundational skills are still important, but the way we are assessing our children further down the line, GCSEs, A-levels, I think that will need to change at some point if we are truly looking at how we are preparing our children for the future.
Do you think we, the adults, know what the world is going to look like in 20 years' time, or do you think we're guessing at it?
Completely guessing at it. I think there's a lot of adults who aren't completely clear on what the world looks like now. It's changed. The change has been happening all around us, and if we aren't dialed into those changes, it's gone well beyond, I believe, what some educators already know or appreciate. So certainly the future that we will go into, we know what it's not going to be. We know we can probably take a good guess at the skills and knowledge that won't be required. And then actually what we have to do is set our children up to really develop their character, to have those core values that we talk about with our rock values, to want to learn and to know how they learn, as opposed to the knowledge that they're taking on.
So now might be a good time to take one of the crowdsourced questions we've got. We've got a question from a Year 5 pupil of yours, and it's Artemis, and she has asked, how do you decide what goes on your timetable? How do you base the timetable, and when do you plan it?
That's a really good question. It's continuous. We don't say, right, we're going to build our timetable now. It's something that's evolving. We had our first meeting end of September, October, looking at our curriculum and therefore the timetable for the following year. We have been incredibly fortunate to have the Alleyn school group to bounce ideas of, take direction from, to have our AIQ pathway, that part of the curriculum, that's built in. But what that looks like, we're contextualizing, making it work for us and for our children. Dance being part of a curriculum as an Alleyn school is just such an amazing thing to see all of our children really embracing that. But to the how we're going to teach languages, the financial literacy, where that fits in within our curriculum, that starts. It's a rolling process. The writing of the timetable, which is something that I still do, that practically starts around now during this time, to make sure we can really optimise a child's experience in their learning.
Is there a commonality with the character traits of the people that you like to work with? Do you like passion? Do you like enthusiasm? Or does each colleague that you work with bring something slightly different to the conversation and to the school?
I think it's really important to have that range, the diversity in all senses of the word throughout your staff team, in the same way that you want it through your school community. So of course, I want all my teachers to be passionate. I want them to be placed within the school where they are doing something that they love. That comes back to, I guess, where we spoke earlier about my journey, how that started, how I went into teaching from kind of a sports direction. That came from ultimately discovering that I was good at it, and I think there's a false narrative, particularly with social media, where you see it's the kind of survivalist theory, that might be the wrong phrase, of where you see these hugely successful people who are actually the exception to the rule, and they're telling everyone else, follow your passion, make it your job. That, I think, is often, probably 9 times out of 10, not particularly good advice. If you can find out what you're really good at doing, get even better at it, then that will become your passion. And then that becomes, you then are working in an environment where your passion is your job. I think that way around is really important. That was certainly my journey of finding out that I was good at coaching, then obviously how that leads into teaching, and leading teams, to then leading schools. And the better you get at something, the more you're going to enjoy it. And then that develops the passion as well. We're very fortunate here, to almost contradict myself, we're very fortunate here that we have specialist teaching where we have our languages, art, drama, music, digital learning, even more than that, who will teach their subject down to our youngest children, down to our 3-year-olds who join us in pre-reception. Now that is slightly different. That is where they have their own subject, and that is their passion. If you speak to our Director of Performing Arts, our art teacher, you can see why our children going through here, it becomes their passion. They almost absorb the passion of that teacher for it to become theirs.
My personal parenting philosophy is around almost overcompensation, where you lean harder into what your child needs most. Can that be applied to teaching?
It absolutely can. I think we probably have similar parenting philosophies. We are a school where children will be able to discover what they need, what they want most, educationally, but also for their own, for themselves, for their to have that sense of belonging. And of course, we set them up to be recognised, to be celebrated in all that we do. But of course, it's not them. It's not the recognition that they will enjoy the most. It's not the success. It's the striving for it. It's the how they get to that point. It's the working towards it. It's the challenge. So we make sure we set up that environment where they have the challenge as well.
Let's go on to the school. You're Alleyn's Regents Park. It's easy to talk about values like all we can be. Tell me about a moment where those values were genuinely tested.
So, yeah, absolutely. There's many examples to think from, actually, where as I see our children moving through the school, in fact, as I see our staff moving through the school, and they are becoming all that they can be. One story that really stands out to me is, I think, in being all we can be, that doesn't happen in isolation. That happens from a foundation of being heard, of being seen, that sense of belonging. I believe a lot of that here starts in the Well, where we're sitting right now, our well-being centre, where children learn about themselves as much as they are from day-to-day learning in the classroom. But I think being known and that being part of all we can be, there's a story that stands out perfectly to me. A boy joined us in year 3. He wasn't overly confident, and that's fine. Actually, being considerate often leads to the most thought and progress. But he was not confident. He was shy, but he stepped into all the opportunities that were being given to him. He joined the choir. He started learning an instrument. He gave his all in all of his maths, English, all of his lessons. Now skip forward to being in year 6. His academics are excellent. But actually what stands out was his performance in Oliver just a few weeks ago. As I said, to being someone who probably wasn't confident to have a conversation in the corridor, to now performing a solo in front of 200, an audience of 200. That in itself, I think, was really special and really reflected a part of his journey to becoming all he could be. But to give slightly more context to that was, that wasn't just a solo. Our director of performing arts knows him so well, and it's that sense of belonging and being known, knows him so well that she wrote that particular song and that particular piece of music to suit his voice, to make sure he could excel and be all that he could be. And for me, that was, the performance alone moved me, frankly, to tears. But then afterwards, to find out that our teaching team had so much care and dedication that they set him up in a situation where it was still a challenge for him. He still had to really stretch himself, but it was in such a way that when he did excel, it was something that was really special. So
If pupils could redesign the school from scratch, rip up everything, what do you think they'd keep and what do you think they'd scrap?
I suspect, I think they would take away the 11 plus, or maybe not that, but the stress and the high stakes situation that can become. They would keep our creative arts. They would probably insist we did more of it. They would ask to do more of our hands-on design technology, AIQ. They know what they want, and I believe actually our children are becoming more informed to what they will need for that future that doesn't currently exist. So I think they would want more of the practical stuff, more of the collaborative working. I'm sure we'd get some other wild trampolining in the playground or other. I mean, our school, having run our school council previously, I know the ideas that can vary. I think ultimately they would want more time in here. They know how important their mental fitness is, and they would want even more time to work on that. I think we set them up pretty well for that already.
And if a child joined the school tomorrow, what would you hope they feel in their first week?
I've said it a lot. I think that they would feel that sense of belonging. I think right from that very first day, what they wouldn't feel is the new child. They wouldn't feel that past stepping into the school. And they probably will have already felt part of the school before their first day. They will have been set up with a buddy. They will feel excited. They will look forward to the boundless opportunities that they will have here.
Do you think there's anything that pupils, children worry about that adults underestimate?
Do I think that is?
No, do you think there's anything? What don't adults know about children that they're worrying about?
I think there are many things. I think it's a real skill to see the world through the eyes of a child. It's something I think becoming a parent helps with, but to see the world through the eyes of a child makes a huge difference. They will still be worrying about an argument that they had at playtime hours before, which is impacting their lessons in the afternoon. And that's where we can be proactive and understand actually little things make a huge difference for children. We can underestimate the importance of children feeling organised and set up for the day. The simple visual timetable for them to know what lesson they're going to next. We intentionally, in year 5 and 6 here, with our specialist teaching, there is almost a feel of a senior school where children will know which lesson they're going to next. We do that intentionally to support them in their transition to a senior school, whichever senior school it may be. So the part of their cognitive load isn't how do I organise myself for the next lesson. They've already learnt that with us here, and actually just being in a new school is what will take over those first few days. There are many other things that we as adults will underestimate. How children feel to their uniform, to the fact they've got different colour socks on to one of their classmates. It's anything can be huge, but I think as long as we are aware that we don't fully understand, will help us to be more empathetic and proactive in our care for children.
You mentioned year 5s and year 6s. Now might be a good time to go to another crowdsourced question. Okay. From a year 6, do you think any of the school's rules affect one gender more than the other, even if that's not the intention? Are there any school rules that might be unfair to boys or girls?
That's a very good question. I had a group of year 6s. It's a lovely story. A girl who joined us in year 4 with absolutely no English at all. We have an amazing EAL team here, but she joined us with no English. By the time she was in year 5, she was in my office, PowerPoint on the screen, making a presentation of how we can make the school even better in almost perfect English. That in itself was an amazing story. The reason that I say this is that then coming to year 6, that same girl with a team now behind her presented an argument for there's a rule that's unfairly swayed towards girls in that they have to wear their hair up in a ponytail. And they wanted to put a petition together and argue that this is an unfair rule, that they shouldn't have to do that. Which firstly, just that confidence, the fact that they know they have that voice and they want to be heard is so important. And it could just have been, well, that's not right. Technically, before they even present that. But it's so important for children to be heard. Because if they aren't right in the situation, even if it's not that, as soon as you just say no, then defense walls go up. Whereas here, by listening and understanding, they are going to be far more receptive of the response, whether it's positive or negative in their favour or not. With that, it's not an unfair rule. If boys have hair below their shoulder, that also needs to go up in a ponytail, or whatever it might be. I don't think there are any rules. In fact, I know there aren't, and it's really important there aren't any rules. I'd be interested to know if there was an edge to this question, that they thought there might have been a rule. But we want there to be equal opportunities for all of our children, boys and girls.
We've touched on boys and girls. Is Alleyn's Regents Park a great school because it's co-ed, or is Alleyn's Regents Park a co-ed school that happens to be great?
I believe it's excellent because it's co-ed. It's a co-ed world that our children will go into. It's the dynamics of a real community, and the working world that our children will go into. And as I said before, celebrating diversity in all of its senses, you can only do that in a co-ed school. So we will celebrate all cultural backgrounds, neurodivergence, any form, gender, any form of diversity. And if it's not there, if you're not part of it, then you can't celebrate it. So I think that certainly leans into its excellence.
So staying with the school, Alleyn's, you've been to Dulwich, you've immersed yourself in what Alleyn's means. How much of that is a pressure? How much are you looking to replicate what you're learning at Dulwich? How much do you bring that to Regent's Park? How much is reinterpretation? How much of that is context? How much of that is copying? Talk to me about the Alleyn's meaning of as you understand it.
Yeah, so the word that stood out in my mind as you said, that was pressure. It is pressure, and it absolutely should be. It's also a huge honour. We've brought 400 years worth of reputation, of prestigious education north of the river. So with that becomes huge accountability. We have had a complete DNA change here, as well as transformative investment to become Alleyn's Regents Park. And that started with many visits to Dulwich to meet Jane Lunnan and her team there, to understand what it means to seek those moments of joy in education and how we can bring that out in our setting here. We've obviously taken on, if we hone on AIQ as an example, this amazing opportunity for collaboration, for creativity, for curiosity, for being innovative with purpose and meaning. We couldn't just lift exactly what they had and bring it here. We made it work for us. We make it work for our community here. Obviously taking the core themes that they have worked so hard in creating over the years, but a wonderful opportunity for us to take that on here. There are many other things from Alleyn's that we've taken on here. The house system, for example, to create children's sense of belonging, again, to be part of a house, to know that they're contributing to their school, to a team, is something that Alleyn's do incredibly well and that we do well here as well.
Let's say on this journey, I'm convinced by what Alleyn's bring. Talk to me about Cognita. How are Cognita shaping this school and the journey that the children are going on?
Cognita, are literally shaping the school in terms of the, as I said, the transformation to our spaces, to really listening and understanding what a school needs, what a school of the future needs, and with the fantastic central teams there, where they are taking as a global schools group, taking what works incredibly well in Asia, in South America, from all around the world, to have that knowledge to transfer into our setting here is something we're incredibly fortunate for, and something that Cognita do fantastically well. And I think to talk of Cognita as a third person is not doing justice to what Cognita is. We are all here part of Cognita. We contribute to a wider community in the same way that we take on the expertise and knowledge further afield.
There's another important party in the school community, and that is the parents. And I wanted to spend some time talking about parents. What do teachers prefer? Do they prefer the passionate parents? Do they prefer the disinterested? But where's the right balance?
That's again a good question. The passion's important. I don't think there are disinterested parents. I don't believe we have that. I think we have time poor parents who cannot commit the time that maybe they want to, speaking from experience. Calm parents, that is, you can be passionate and you can be calm. I think if our teachers could choose the profile of parent, it would be calm, because the passion is important, but as soon as you lack or you lose that level of calm, it will impact the children. If parents are stressed, if they're anxious, their child will absorb that, and it will become their anxieties, their stress. So if there were a choice, which there never will be, it would be passionate, but with a sense of calm.
Are you on TikTok, Tom?
I am not.
Let me show you something.
Go on.
So this is a TikToker. He is called Coach Philly, and he's an American teacher. I want to play you a video.
Emails that I've gotten from parents, part 14. Up first, subject, question about grades. Dear Mr. Phillips, I noticed that my daughter received a B on the test. I'm sure you graded it fairly, but I do hope that her effort was fully recognized. After all, we all know how much she studies at home, unlike other students, ... Warm regards, a concerned parent. Next one, subject, effort recognition. Hi, Coach. While the assignment may not have been...
So, yeah, what do parents... Can parents make ridiculous points? Can parents get things wrong? Do you find the cliched parent saying my child is better than the other children in the school? How much of that is a reality?
So to the level of the TikToker there, to sound really old, I don't think we have things on that level. Although, to tell you a story which may be legend, it may be true. Before my time, we're very fortunate to be right next to Regents Park, which is also right next to London Zoo. We use both a lot within our school day. A PE teacher told me that a parent asked to see the risk assessment for what will happen if a lion were to escape from the zoo, which I think, if that's true, it may just be legend. If that's true, that's maybe TikTok worthy. But no, look, parents will. I can see where that's coming from. But head teachers will also get things wrong when it comes to communication. I know that I have certainly done that. But ultimately, even with those funny examples, if you actually drill down into them, all of these emails, all of these communications either come from a place of potentially fear, but ultimately sort of love and care. And I think it's my responsibility to translate that into something meaningful, into something that we can address, we can be proactive with, so that a parent doesn't ever feel the need to send in those sorts of emails. There isn't that gap of knowledge between what's happening and what they think should be happening.
Do you think there's ever an example of parents getting in the way of their children's development?
Absolutely. And I spoke about over scaffolding before. That's a great example of over scaffolding, where they don't want their child to struggle. I mean, that must be just a natural human instinct, is to make sure your child doesn't struggle. But actually, as I said before, it's those struggles that will equal progress when planned in the right way, and maybe replace the word struggle with challenge or stretch. But yeah, ultimately, parents can, with the best will in the world, by overprotecting, they will, again, it's that stealing or taking that opportunity for a child to overcome a challenge. And that's where an overprotective parent may hinder that progress.
And do you think there's a truth about schooling that parents find hard to accept? Do you think there's one thing that parents will just never get?
I think the idea of focusing on your child's progress from their starting point, and that's the most important thing to focus on. There will always be parents wanting to know where their child ranks within the class or nationally, and wanting to compare to other people. But actually, their teacher will know that. They will absolutely know that, and they will know the steps to take to ensure that child is making excellent progress. But the importance of knowing where they are against their classmates, it's not important. And I think that is something that some parents will struggle with.
So Alleyn's hasn't been on the horizon for that long. Do you think you've always been authentically Alleyn's? Do you think that there was a merging of minds when Alleyn's came onto your professional journey? Do you think, have you always been authentically Alleyn's, I suppose the question is?
I think ultimately I have been. I don't think I've always been aware of it.
Yeah.
I think there is I've always been proud to be research and evidence informed, but maybe to a point of not finding my true identity, where my true beliefs are, where I've seen that, yes, retrieval practice and a do now session at the start of the lesson will have great outcomes. And that is important, and I do believe that. But actually, I think I was at risk of being research and evidence led instead of just being informed. And then what's happened with becoming Alleyn's, and I think why it works, is that it probably helped me discover what was already there of being authentically Alleyn's, of really wanting to see the joy come out in all aspects of learning, of empowering staff members to challenge their classes, to go kind of beyond the norm slightly of what learning in a classroom might look like. And that's how I get the most out of my role. And yes, I've to take a popular word, with the Alleyn's partnership, everything's been amplified, and I think that's within me as well, of what I already held dear to me within education. That's just been amplified and maybe become even more clear of that importance.
I want to focus on you as a leader now, Tom. If I were to ask your closest colleague to talk about you, to talk about your defining qualities, what do you think that they would say, and what do you think that they wouldn't say about you?
I think my closest colleagues, as a leader, would say, I'm kind and understanding, and I listen, and hopefully they would say that I show a genuine empathy. Now, I think that's not to be confused with, I think you can be kind and make really tough decisions. And I think where you know your team incredibly well, it makes it much easier to have difficult conversations when they're necessary, because it will be necessary at some point. The other part of that question is what they wouldn't say in describing me. They may talk about behind my back about how competitive I am.
Right.
Because I want this school to be the best school. I want to be the best leader of the best school. And that comes with continuous reflection and development. And I'm sure that my team would see that and feel that.
And is that what drives you? The desire to be the best?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can look back to that sort of sporting background that you're always wanting to get better. That you cannot, as soon as you think you are the best at something, you're going to rest on your laurels, and you will soon be left behind because you're no longer. So yeah, striving. I think I think it was a Cognita sort of strapline for a bit of being the best at getting better. And that's what I see for us here, and it's what I see for myself personally as a leader. I would like to think I take feedback well, and I'm always keen to act on it.
So let's talk about your mistakes. How do you deal with your mistakes, first of all, before we come on to other people's?
I own them quickly, publicly, if it needs to be publicly owned. We teach our children that making mistakes is the way that they will learn, it is the way that they will get better. We cannot say to our children, it's okay to make mistakes, you will get better from them, and then try to hide ours or not admit to them. I have made mistakes, I will continue to make mistakes, and will continue to get better as a result of it. So yeah, that's my take on mistakes, and it's those mistakes that you then reflect upon. And that, I've always been that way as a teacher. If I was getting feedback on a lesson and the observer would say, well, how did you feel that went? My mind is straight away, what went wrong? How can I make it better? And actually that's something that I need to change my mindset on slightly, is to look for the good as well and the positives and build on that. And I certainly do that better. I do that more now. But I think most teachers will jump to the what could I have done? I have done better, and that's what we get from our mistakes. So yeah, owning them. As soon as you own them, you can reflect on them, and you can work past them.
And does that apply to other people's mistakes as well? How do you deal with those?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important that there's a culture set where people feel that they can own and admit their mistakes. I think where the likelihood is, if people feel that they can't speak out when they've made a mistake, it's maybe not so much a reflection on them, but more of a reflection of the culture that they're in. I feel that we have, for children and for staff, we have this environment where people can openly say, I've made a mistake. And as soon as something is aired, then you can work past that much more quickly.
Life is a series of trade-offs, you could argue. What are the trade-offs you've made as part of being a leader, as part of this role?
Trade-offs. The greys in my hair,
yeah,
definitely that has they have developed quite quickly since becoming a head. No, but I mean, I think being a head of a school, being that leader is something you carry with you all the time. So you're constantly on. Work is never finished. Going through holidays, there's always that check emails, make sure there's nothing urgent there. But that's double-edged in that where you feel a whole responsibility for the school, and that can feel like that comes at a cost, but also it means you celebrate in all the successes. So I love it when a teacher will forward on an email, and teachers aren't very good at this in singing their own praises, but I encourage teachers to forward on an email that a parent will have sent, just saying the impact they've had on their child's life. So in the same way, I'm always on as the head teacher, and that can build up a lot of pressure. I think also feeling responsible for the whole school means that you can celebrate in other people's successes as well, and be incredibly proud of that community.
Have you had to make decisions that are right for the school, but potentially not right for an individual child?
Yes. I mean, to answer the question honestly, that's part of the journey we're going through at the moment as we become academically selective. We are selective, and I don't like saying that we are just academically selective. It's beyond that. Academics will be part of our selection process and criteria, but actually we're looking at how we are selective on the values that a child will have, how they live our rock values day to day, as well as the academic side of things. So as we increase our academic rigor, that won't be right for all of our children who are currently in our school. But then my job as head of a prep school hasn't changed, in that I am directing families, children into a school that will suit them best, usually at the end of year 6. And sometimes those conversations therefore come a bit earlier, because our school won't suit all children.
Which colleagues inspire you? How and why? You can go outside the school if you want. You can stay inside the school. You can give me examples, not specifics. Yeah.
So I've got many colleagues who inspire me. And I think that's really important, sort of over the years, but also now. So, I mean, when the Alleyn's team first came, and I met them all, that in itself, to meet Guy, for example, and hear how he talks with such passion and knowledge about creating these learning environments for our children, to having regular meetings with Jane Lunnan, who is such an inspiring leader, just, listening to those clips on AIQ recently, and to be able to work with colleagues like that is a real privilege, and for me, a real learning experience too. Within our school, whenever I'm touring parents, or actually frankly whenever I have any time and I get to wander around the school, to pop into our art classroom and speak to Simon Collum, our head of arts, who we spoke about passion before, speaks with such passion around his subject, around art, but also about the children's work. And you can just see he's not just saying that every child is an artist. He truly believes that, and you get that sense. But that's the same across the whole school. Our teachers are so passionate and just care so deeply for the children in their charge.
And there's a place for personality in your school. You've told me before how Miss Greenham manages to smuggle in a 1980s or 1990s hip hop track into most school productions.
I'd forgotten that I told you that. Yeah, absolutely. There was we have a medley, and I'm surprised when I hear, importantly, no lyrics, but that sort of Dr. Dre coming through the back, or whatever it might be. We want to develop our children's characters. We want them to thrive in this rapidly evolving world. If we're not modeling that in our teachers and the autonomy and agency that our teachers have, then we can't hope for our children. So absolutely, that our teachers' character to shine through is definitely something we're seeing.
What keeps you up at night? Serious question. Do you sleep well?
No.
Okay.
I don't. However, there's not a control test to this, because I first came head at the same time as having a newborn. So there is no correlation between becoming head and lack of sleep. But of course there is, in reality, if I wasn't being woken up by my children anyway. Because of the stress and pressure and just ideas coming up to, oh, we could try this, we could do that, or I must mention that in my open morning speech. I know that this is such an amazing school here. And I think my biggest fear is to step through those doors is where you will then experience the excellence that is Alleyn's Regents Park in all senses of the word, across the whole curriculum, co-curricular as well. So yeah, absolutely, I will be waking up at 2:00 in the morning thinking about banners being put outside school, or the lesson that I'm teaching the next day. So I think it's really important that I still teach, and I will always want to be part of the teaching team here. I think that's important to have that on the ground experience. I love teaching AIQ. I love teaching our critical thinking lessons. And I will, the night before teaching a lesson, I will suddenly think, oh, this would be great to do that. It will address that need. It will, so on all sorts of levels. Obviously, the strategic, the leading of a school is what gives me the most sleepless nights, and various other things. I remember a long time ago now when I went for an interview, and that was an interview question: what keeps you awake at night? And this was back quite a long time ago. I think when I was assistant head, going into a different role, and I think that maybe defines the difference in a leadership role. Of back then, I couldn't really say what kept me awake at night. And I thought, oh, that means I must be doing things well in my role as an assistant head. But actually, I think it shows the weight that a head teacher takes on, and that difference, and how they will, in part, protect some of their team from some of that worry. And worry is the wrong word, but it's just that constant thinking of opportunities. How can we make the most of everything that we have here?
It's funny, I've got a few questions on a number of things that you've just touched upon. One around the desire to keep teaching, because in lots of other lines of work, you almost get promoted more and more, where you're promoted so far away from what you fell in love with first. Yeah. So do you miss teaching day to day? Where do you pick up the qualifications to become a deputy head and then a head? How does that journey work, and how are you absorbing things on that journey?
So my journey has largely worked through experience and drive and determination to gain more responsibility and thriving off increased responsibility. The teaching, so what I've always loved teaching in the classroom, but I've also always loved the coaching element, the working with teachers. So I have had to step back from the classroom, probably more than I would like, but actually you have to, I guess that's, we spoke before, what's the cost of being a head teacher? That's one of the costs. That's one of the middle ground that you have to find to teach the right amount, so you know what's happening on the ground level, so you can share inspiration and invite colleagues in to observe and so on. But I have to have time to step back and look at the bigger picture, to get into other classrooms, to see the quality of teaching sort of around the school.
Talk to me about you as a friend. Are all your friends teachers? Have you got friends with other jobs? And do you talk about work with your friendship circle?
So being from Guernsey originally, majority of my friends have stayed in Guernsey.
Wow.
At the one or two of them are teachers as well. I've got a very close friend who is also a teacher in Nottingham, and we will talk. He's deputy head, he's been acting deputy. So we will talk about those differences. And it's kind of the differences that we talk about. He works in the state sector, a challenging but rewarding school, and the differences that come with our different sectors that we work in.
And since you've been ahead, do you think you've changed as a partner, as a friend, as an individual? Has it seeped into every part of your life?
It has. I think that's the reality. I think, for my there are key points of stress and pressure, which will, it's going to have an impact. Naturally, it will for anyone. But equally, then there's really sort of high points of celebration and recognition. So that will seep into all parts of life. And my two boys joining here in September, and my wife working up at Alleyn's Hampstead, means it will be impossible not to talk around it. But you know, that's, as I said, it really is a passion of mine. So.
And when on your way to becoming a head, what did you not realise was part of the job? And is there a part of the job that people completely misunderstand?
The journey that I've gone through, from being a deputy head academic, deputy, I think some of those responsibilities I've kept and brought with me. And actually, so even like writing the timetable, for example, something that I did as deputy academic and I've just kept. And this is where I need to do more delegating responsibility and trusting my team. I have an amazing team, so it's more about sharing, and in some areas doing less better. Instead of, I think there are some perceptions of a head teacher that they will be opening up the school, they'll be locking the school, and absolutely in some contexts that is what happens, and that they do absolutely everything. But that's not my role. I'm incredibly fortunate to have a fantastic team here, to have, and that's what part of being part of a schools group, both Alleyn schools group and Cognita, where I don't have to think about the small details of the admissions, of marketing, that I have amazing teams that I can trust. I want to be part of that, and I make sure I am part of the right points. But it's almost the reverse of your question, that actually I think being a good head teacher is sometimes stepping back, almost the same way of teaching. You want to set your colleagues up for that challenge so that they can succeed. Whereas if you try and hold on to everything yourself, one, you're setting yourself up for too much work, too much pressure, and not letting those around you really thrive.
I want to move to a big world problem. I'm going to give you a choice.
Yeah.
We're going to try and crack it in about 4 or 5 minutes.
Easy.
Okay. Yeah. You've got a choice. You can look at the BBC, you can look at toxic masculinity, or we can try and crack social media. Where would you like to go?
Such easy topics, James. Well, we touched on, I mean, they are linked,
yes,
clearly, in a really big way. Let's start with social media. And that might bring us into a little bit of toxic masculinity as well.
Where should the responsibility for responsible use of social media lie? With the users, with the parents, with the regulators? Who should run with that first?
So I think first it should be the regulators, in my opinion, and I'm seeing this through the eyes of a parent and what may lie ahead for my boys. I would love if social media were to be banned. And I said before that we educate, we don't ban, but actually for social media to be the age, the user limit to be increased significantly. I think there is a great misconception of screen use and social media being the same in terms of dangers. When actually we know here that an iPad in the hands of a talented teacher is an incredible educational tool. The Instagram, TikTok, etc., they are the dangerous. They are the addictive algorithms. That's where the real worry is, and that's before we even get to the content that they're being exposed to. But even just that, the addictive nature of them. So I think it should start with sort of legislation around usage being for older children. Then there's the next stage of responsibility, in my opinion, should be the parents. And I'm saying that as a parent, that I should be responsible for what my children are accessing. But actually the schools play a huge part in that. In educating the parents first to be able to be responsible with that right level of knowledge of the threats and opportunities. Because we shouldn't flip social media into being this complete source of evil and will, it has that potential. But we, for example, in an AIQ unit I was teaching, we got onto the source of fast fashion and the damage to our world that's doing. And one of the examples that we explored of combating that was looking at renting clothes instead of buying them. And that was being promoted by an influencer within social media. So it can be a platform. I mean, undoubtedly this will be on social media of some form. So it can be a really useful source. But our children's minds, we know they're not fully developed to understand the risks that they are putting themselves in, let alone the almost set up as gambling and again the addictive nature of them. So I think the age limit can be pushed to it, but then of course which is incredibly complicated with
children getting around
and so that then flips back to, we know I remember when YouTube, I think it was YouTube first became a thing and schools banned it. They said you can have teacher tube but not YouTube. But then the reality is that children were going home and using YouTube in an uncensored environment where they didn't have a teacher there supporting them. So in fact, using YouTube as the example, it would be, I think it was even Google, when Google, am I that old? It was when Google first came in. It's actually teaching children how to use a search engine responsibly. There is, maybe not with this age group, but there's definitely that point of educating children in social media, how it can be used responsibly, how to be critical of it. And I think the same arguments can be used for the use of AI as well.
You raise a really good point, and it sounds like the school, from what you were saying before, are doing quite a lot around teaching about digital literacy and understanding. You know, in my household, we don't allow TikTok as a source. If I hear my children say I saw it on TikTok, it's like, no, that's not good enough. What was the source? Who on TikTok? Because you have to remember the BBC are on social media. You have to remember CNN, the Wall Street Journal. Proper news sources are on social media. The other thing I think is you have to look at what we're regulating. So you've made a good point. You have to distinguish between the algorithms making all content a bit more addictive, a little bit more algorithmic, but then also the harmful content that is available on social media. Maybe now we're drifting into toxic masculinity, I don't know. Talk to me on toxic masculinity. How do we counter that? Is there a simple silver bullet?
There won't. I think the point we've got to in the world, there isn't a simple silver bullet. I think within a school, it's the culture we set, it's the role models that we are, it's how we speak to each other in public, in front of children, to children, with children. That's incredibly important, but we can be more proactive than that. So we are. There is a program, a course called Working with Boys, which is essentially. Setting the culture within a school, setting the culture for children to understand what a healthy relationship is, what a healthy way of being within a community, within a school, within society is. So we have to, from our youngest children, we teach behavior. That's not something that just happens. It has to be taught. We teach them about their feelings, how to regulate them, and we teach children, our older children, to be critical consumers. Actually, to talk back to another one of our AIQ units, which is all about being critical consumers, and that's not just in the sense of we then branched off onto fast fashion and what's being bought, but it's actually being critical of what we're as a consumer in terms of what we are watching, what we are listening to, and that all builds into creating this culture where toxic masculinity doesn't have a place.
Is it important for you as a teacher and for your education team here to speak the same language as the children you're teaching? Should you know Mr. Beast is? Should you know what rage bait is? Should you know what a KSI is? Do you need to know those things, or do you almost think it's better to have a bit of distance?
I think there's a balance. There is... we had at our school performance, we had some of our former students coming back and hearing them call each other bro, and that certainly has no place for a teacher to be communicating like that. It did make me laugh slightly in the context of where we were. But it's going back to the point of the ability to see the world through a child's eyes.
Yes.
And actually you need to know what the world that they're living in to a point. Now we have a great team here within the school, but also Cognita, where if there are dangerous viral trends, that we will be alerted to it, certain things, certain phrases to look out for, to listen to, so we can help to protect our children. But also I think... I think that ability to have an understanding of what's important to a child, and actually then we can be a bit proactive, where we can see something like Roblox, for example, is something that we are seeing more of being an issue, and we have to understand what they're talking about to understand the complications. But no, I can remember the moment that my charge on my iPad as I was teaching a lesson went to 67%, and I hadn't heard the whole 6-7 thing before yet the class. So I was quite happy to be out of the loop on that one. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
A really good example. It's a good time for another crowdsourced question from a former pupil talking about how much should teachers know. This former pupil of yours asks, should teachers show their sillier side to pupils as well as their serious side? It's an interesting point, isn't it? Do you want to show the 360 approach, or do you want to keep that distance? Just on it falls off the back of my question about how much should you know and how much should you show?
Yeah, that's a really involved question. That firstly, there needs to be clear professional boundaries and respect. So initially, no. I think particularly for establishing the high expectations, that it will be that professional, serious side initially. However, I think for teachers to show that they are vulnerable, so maybe not the silliness side, I think actually showing vulnerability is incredibly powerful. It can be from as simple as when they've made a mistake in something they're doing, oh, I've made a mistake, or when a child asks a question they don't know the answer, you say, oh, I don't know that actually. Let's find that out together. So that side of a teacher, I don't think a teacher should always be right and always be saying, I'm right, I will always know an answer, but actually to show that they're slightly vulnerable. And then you can go beyond that as well, to where teachers can share experiences that they've had, and that becomes really powerful. I am awful at talking about my dad and his passing, I think, from sort of growing up and bottling everything up. But where there's been really, really difficult situations for families, and I know that by me showing a little bit of vulnerability to them, kind of sharing some of what's actually a shared experience that they may not know about, I know has been hugely powerful. So I've dodged the silliness bit, but the vulnerability I think is incredibly powerful for a teacher to show that.
When a student leaves here, what do you hope that they carry with them that can't be measured?
I would like if a child leaves here knowing the importance of asking questions and knowing how they learn, not what they learn, I think is incredibly important. That will take them a long way. The world that they're going into will no longer reward knowledge in the same way that it used to. The world that they are growing up in will reward adaptability. So a child who leaves here knowing how they learn, how they can discover things, the right questions to ask, that will show that we've succeeded.
Do you think that's in keeping with going back to our AI conversation? Are there things that children should never stop learning because of AI and things that they should stop learning because of AI?
I don't think there's anything that should be stopped learning. I think, do children need to know their times tables anymore? I mean, to be honest, they probably haven't for a long time. But it's the process that they go through, as not always just the knowledge that they're acquiring. There will be some skills that will become less valuable than they were. There are going to be certain job roles that will not exist. So we want to make sure we're putting children on a path to succeed. It links back to over-engineered early specialization. We do not want to be for that to be a pathway for our children. It's that generalization, it's that adaptability. So therefore, our evolving curriculum, where we are currently working with a really exciting company, LearnX, and that is a focus on AI. That is kind of reverse engineering. They're at the forefront of AI in business in the world. It's reverse engineering what skills will be needed on top of the core skills. So where we will always need the reading, the writing, the maths, there are going to be extended skills that will change. That might be vibe coding at the moment, maybe prompt engineering, but that's going to change. Those things are probably already old now, frankly, and it's for us to keep on evolving what our curriculum looks like, to empower our children as they go into their futures.
You mentioned adaptability just now. Have you changed your mind on a decision that you've made recently?
So I have changed. I have evolved myself in my way of thinking towards education from being quite a rigid approach of a knowledge-based curriculum to where children in the right controlled environment can learn exactly what you want them to learn. And maybe there is a place for that. I think there was a place for that even just a couple of years ago. But where we are now with AI, that's had to change. So I think I've shifted. But also I think that's been part of Alleyn's and seeing the importance in the joy of learning, in children discovering for themselves and going back to that curiosity and confidence that is built.
Is it better for a child to be right or for a child to be heard?
I touched upon this slightly earlier, I think, and it's best, in my opinion, it's really important, in fact, for a child to be heard first. If a child is not heard, but simply told they're wrong and this is right, that won't lead to any learning or progression or development. If a child, they may hold a really strong view that we know, it might even link back to toxic masculinity, for example. So there may be some views that are coming into school. Thankfully, we don't have that. But if that were to happen, if you were to just tell a child, no, you're wrong, stop saying that, that child, I believe, is likely defense walls go up. They're not listening to the alternative, and they may even kind of hold that view with more strength than they did previously. Whereas if they are heard first, genuinely heard and listened to and feel listened to, I believe they're more likely to do the same back when you explain to them and challenge their position. And again, it's being in a culture where we actively encourage children to respectfully challenge each other's ideas. You can't challenge someone's idea if you haven't been heard in the first place. So I think definitely being heard is the most important thing there.
We've spoken about the future of the children. Talk to me about the future of your team here at Alleyn's Regents Park. Some people will be watching this now and they might be thinking, doing a bit of background research, if they're going to come and see you for a job interview. How do they get a job with you? What are the qualities? What are the things that they must do?
Well, look, there is, to go to the old quote, there's an all in Alleyn's, and we believe we all can be all we can be. That all incorporates not just the children, but the staff, the parents as well. So it's about somebody who wants to push themselves, who wants to take the opportunities that will present themselves here to develop, to be the best at getting better. So to come in and show that passion for not just for their subject, but the way of doing things at Alleyn's.
Have you had strong views on a subject that doesn't really matter recently? Blur versus Oasis. Who was the best England centre forward? What's been your biggest, most passionate debate about something that doesn't really matter?
Oh, let me think. I'm sure I've had many of these with my 5-year-old. What would be my... I was not really into Blur or Oasis unless they were on the soundtrack to FIFA.
Fine.
Which Blur, Song 2.
Song 2 will have been on the soundtrack
very good.
to FIFA, yes.
So that was my sort of gaming background. And actually my son has just started playing FIFA a little bit with me, which to some people, and this is where I can start to feel quite passionately about gaming and how that has gone hand in hand with screen time and the poor use of it. And I think it's a phrase that is in the anxious generation. I talk about shoulder-to-shoulder gaming. So the online gaming, that kind of fills me with dread and what my sons may be part of and the dangers there. But actually, what I grew up on, and where you'd kind of have an extension cable and a multi, where you could play 4-player, and you still had a memory card for your save games, and playing shoulder-to-shoulder is a social experience. And that's something that's been a really fun part of my journey with my sons growing up.
A Sunday afternoon after Sunday roast, maybe I'm painting too much of an idealistic picture.
Yeah.
Is it a box set? Is it an afternoon walk? Is it a trip to a friend's house? What does winding down look like to you and your family?
So winding down, I don't know exists with a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, but it's slightly different focus. But it will be maybe going to the park or going swimming. There is an element of keeping the boys as active as possible to tire them out, because then that leads to some, but really it's about shared experiences. So we've just I'm going to talk about more screen time now, but we've just started a tradition on a Saturday evening where we'll all sit down and watch Gladiators together. So that sort of wholesome TV where they're in their pajamas. It works for us because it puts a nice full stop on the end of the evening, they're up to bed, but it's that shared experience of having a bit of popcorn, watching some TV together. But at the moment, we've kind of gone into clubs, so it's football on a Sunday morning, we go swimming on a Sunday afternoon. But yeah, getting outside, going for walks, and we have just pretty much turned our garden into a 5-side football pitch, and it's just getting outside and playing football. But my motivations have changed on becoming a parent from you asking how that's changed. Where I've previously been motivated purely by wanting to be the best and almost being quite selfish with that, now a lot of my motivation comes from either wanting to be a role model to my boys, or frankly to make them proud of what I'm doing. So this is that will come with the school that I'm creating for them to be part of, which I find is just an amazing thing, because they're going to have the most perfect school to grow in, and I'll get to see snippets of that, which I'm incredibly excited about. Slightly nervous for them calling out an assembly, kind of mid-assembly, shouting out "Daddy," but we'll work on that. But in other areas, that's come up with me signing up to run a marathon, which was partly because I decided I need a target, something to work towards, but also in the back of my mind, it was, which is maybe speaking to my ego, I'm not sure, but it was the idea of my boys being on the finish line and them being excited because I've got a medal or whatever it might be. So it really is doing that for them. And then recently with my son playing more and more football, and he's quite competitive, not always good at losing.
Where does he get that from,
I
Tom?
have no idea where he gets it from, but I decided it would be a good idea for me to start playing a little bit of football again so he could come and watch. Maybe to understand how to be a good loser, I might be able to help with that. But purely from that motivation was for them to, so yeah, running a marathon, starting playing football again, so that they can see that.
Is there anything? Might be because the questions haven't been very good. It might be because you want to underline something from our conversation.
Yeah.
That what would be the takeaway that you want people to go away with? Whether it's about you as an individual, whether it's about Alleyn's, whether it's about the journey you've been on. Are there one or two key takeaways?
Yeah, I think authenticity is a really big thing to take away from this. That firstly, we are authentically Alleyn's. And I think that comes from a place of, I hope that's how I'd be described as a leader, in being authentic in what I do, in seeing the world through the eyes of children, in truly wanting what's best for everyone, which can be challenging, it can be difficult conversations, but it's shaping the best school possible. So I think that sense of authenticity is a key takeaway from this.
Brilliant. Tom, thank you.
Nice.